Hello there, good morning. My name is Michael and I'm undertaking a little bit of a project. I've got some time on my hands after office hours, and what I'd like to do is to use that time to bring back to life a series of old motorcycles. Now, there's lots to choose from out there, but I was lucky enough to find on Facebook a seller that was selling 5 Suzuki 80cc motorcycles in various condition. So this one here is a pick of them, and this is the one we're going to do first. But a little bit of a story. The asking price was too much. I couldn't afford it. So I decided to ring the seller and talk with him about it. And it was decided that I would be able to purchase all 5. One is a basket case, the others will be running again. But I could purchase all 5 for a good price, provided I got this one running and give it back to him. I thought that was a great deal. I know nothing about this motorcycle. I know nothing about this model, except that it was built in 1965 originally. I've managed to go on the internet and download things like the parts catalogue, the owner's manual, and most importantly for me, the service manual. And I'll put a link in the description where you can buy these online for just $15. I think it's quite inexpensive for the amount of information you get. Now, I haven't previously gone through and reviewed any of this, so I'll be flying blind. And I think that's a great way to do a video so we can both go through and learn and discover together. I'll give you a quick look at this bike and we'll just talk about a few things. So what we've got here is an 80cc 2-stroke. It's a carburetor engine. It's got a 4-speed gearbox. And the way that the gears work is it's 4 down. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then to go up, with this type of one, you use your heel on the gear stick and you just push it back 4 times and you end up in neutral. We've got a small carburetor in there. Our head and everything looks like it's in good condition. Everything's not too bad on this bike. Under here, no, this is a key. We don't have a key, so we're going to have to work that out. Under here, we'll have a look shortly and see what's in there. This bike was apparently in a lot better condition than what it presents now, but it got caught in some floods. So, and it sat in sort of a foot deep water for quite some time. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happened. But a lot of the one side of the rim, as you can see here, one side of the rim is quite heavily pitted and rusted. And yet another section seems to be good chrome. Again, I'm not sure what's under here. I know some of the bikes that I've got as part of this project have got oil injection. This one, however, seems to be premix. There, of course, kickstart. There's no electric start on these. And it's going to be a lot of fun to go through and have a look at these bikes in more detail. This one is showing 8,602 miles. So we have a throttle and everything on the right hand side. On the left hand side we have a manual choke, clutch lever which is not connected. Our fuel tank looks pretty good, even though I haven't had a look inside. The seat is obviously reupholstered and it looks pretty uncomfortable to me, but we'll have a look at that. We've got a fully enclosed chain guard on this model. We've also got tail lights and indicators. Let's start by removing the side cover. I don't know how long this bolt is, but I've certainly turned it a lot of times. Okay, a plastic side cover. Underneath here we've got a battery that's not connected. It's not connected on one side. Let's just remove that. Well, that's just sitting in there. So that's not very good. We'll have to put a new fitting on that. and it's a 6 volt 4 amp hour. So that means these bikes are a 6 volt system. So I'm just going to go and put this on charge. Before we start here, let's just do a few checks. So I've got the multimeter out, we'll put it on DC. I'm just going to check if the battery's completely had it or if it's recoverable. Oh, 5.8 volts, so that should be okay. The first thing I want to do, however, is fix up these fittings. So we'll go ahead and lock the ends off here. We'll start with some fresh wire. Okay, looking at the bike, we need to put on a positive fitting. Sorry, we need to put on a male fitting on the positive side. So I've got some new fittings here. Also have a inspect crimping tool. These are a special double jaw device. Might have to take a little bit more off this just to make sure we get a good contact. So we want to get a good contact and crimp. First crimp, second crimp, let's give it a good pull. That's rock solid, it's not going anywhere. And on this side, we have a female fitting. What I should also do is put on the sleeve first. Just twist that wire. I'll drop on the sleeve. This has already got a sort of a coated plastic on this wire, so it's double protected. So I'll just put a bit of moisture on there, just by licking it, and it should now become a lot easier to slide in, which it is almost. Okay, get our crimping tool. I'll go on the 2.5 setting for the first crimp. Just want to make sure it's positioned correctly, and then we'll go back and do it properly. I like to have two bites at it, using both sides tools, because it gives you a much better fitting that's more permanent. Okay, so now that's all done, looking good. I'm going to put it on charge. Took me a little time to find a 6 volt charger out of all of the stuff I've got. Not much in the way of 6 volt chargers, but anyway, I found one, an old one. So I've just found the data plate for this bike. So it's a Suzuki K10. It's 79 cc's. It has a different frame number to engine number, and total weight is only 70 kilograms. So this model is a K10. I know from what the seller told me that some of the other models there are K10Ps and other variations of this basic bike, which was sold at one time as a road variant, other times as an off-road dirt variant, and what we've got here is actually the road version. And you can tell it's the road version because we've got a covered chain guide on the back. It's got different rear suspension, and the front forks have got covers on the tubes, whereas from what I'm told, the off-road version has open springs, but I may be wrong. One thing I also noticed tucked in the back here is a very rudimentary steering lock by the look of it in there in the darkness, but we'll have a look at that in a minute. I'm going to start now by taking off the seat and the fuel tank so we can get a look at what's underneath. That is a very shortened bolt. Someone's cut that off to make it fit. Let's go around here. This bike looks like it's had a couple of goes at restoration during its previous life. Oh, that's heavy. That's why it's heavy. It's got a solid steel frame and all of these are springs. So you've got a frame up the top front here where it mounts, springs to the middle section, which also have springs, and then springs to the back section. Quite interesting. But I'm guessing that on its own is probably 4 kilos. Quite heavy. Okay, the fuel tank mounts with 2 bolts at the back, and we've got the same at the front. Not even sure if that's actually screwed in or not. Seems to be just so loose it's not even finger tight. Okay, we can lift the front of the tank up. We'll take off the back here. So, I'm switching over to 12mm. That's out. We'll have a look on the other side, what we've got there. Okay, so it's just a long bolt. We'll just try and screw that out. So you can see here, this is just a long a bolt that's been replaced at some stage. And then we just have to remove the fuel hose. Okay. It doesn't seem to be a way to get the tank straight off, but there's where the seat mounts here is a bit strange. There's a couple of pins in this rod, and I think if we take that rod out, we should be able to then remove the tank quite easily. So I'll just pop these out. Okay, so we've got the rod out. Now we'll just check. Getting hung up on something else here. I think it's just those brackets underneath. Okay, we're off. Just lost the rubber off the side here, but just go and find that. If it's rubber and it's round, it could be anywhere. Okay, there's nothing in this fuel tank, it's bone dry. I can hear some rattling inside. It's looking pretty good, there's no major rust on it. And again, I can see tape marks on the bottom, so it's been painted at some stage. Let's have a look in the... Okay, the cap is just a push on, push off. It doesn't unscrew at all. I'm just going to have a look inside. There's quite a lot of rust in there. I don't know if I can get it to a stage where I can let you see inside as well. Maybe I can. But you can see there, it's a lot of rust. But we'll have a look at that further in a few minutes. So I'm just going to put some of these parts back in so we don't lose them. So I'm just going to put this rod back in the back here. I'll drop the pins back in. So that's locked in. This bolt which holds the front of the fuel tank on, I'm just going to put that back through. So now we have pretty easy access to everything. I'm now going to go around and undo the other engine cover. Oh. Okay, it looks like something is broken on this one. I can also see some cracks along here, which may have been repaired already before. Oh yes, I tried to glue them. You can see glue in there. Now in here, there just seems to be a mass of wires. There's a fuse, pretty dodgy. It's got tape around it. So many of these have got positive wires that are exposed. There's a bit of plastic hose here, which by the look of it, connects to the air cleaner. There's going to be some mysteries in here. When I say air cleaner, I don't mean it connects to the air cleaner. This tube connects to the carburetor, and it obviously has no air filter at the moment. So we've disconnected that, it's just pulled off the end. Okay. Yeah, our choke is just sitting there, it hasn't been played with, but it actually works, so that's good. Just wind that back to the start so we can have a good look. We'll pop the slide out and remove the carburetor. Now that is a tiny carburetor slide, not much to that. I'll just pull that forward for now, and I'll undo the clamp at the front of the carburetor and remove the carburetor. Yep, it's an 8mm. It's only taken a couple of turns and I can see the carburetor is already off. I love how basic everything is on these bikes. So it's a Mikuni carburetor from Japan. It looks to be in reasonable condition, but I can see a little bit of weepage around here. But I'm going to pull this apart and have a look. Just a quick bit of information before we proceed. Most of the screws and bolts on any Japanese bike, they look like they're a normal Phillips head, but they're not. They're built to a different standard, which is called JIS, which stands for Japanese Industrial Screw. As you can see, they look very similar to a Phillips head point, but they're not. They've got a completely different angle. And if we look at the bottom of this carburetor as an example, if we can get it to focus, you'll see a lot of these screws have actually been rounded out, and that's because normal Phillips heads have been used on them rather than a JIS screwdriver. Just an important piece of useless information. And see what we've got. These look to be just not even finger tight. So again, someone's had this apart to try and get it running. Oh, a lot of debris in here. There's a lot of dried up fuel in the bottom. The gasket has seen many better days. We'll have to get a new gasket. You can see the staining on the floats because they've been sitting in fuel, bad fuel for so long. Bit of cleanup required in here, but we'll continue with pulling it apart, and we'll see how our seats and jets are going. As a starting point though, let's just check our screws here. Half a turn, so close to 1 turn in. So I'm just going to draw myself a little diagram. So this one here is 1 turn. Let's have a look what this one's doing. Not even 1/4 of a turn. So I'll write this here, 1/4 turn. Let's pull them out, see what we've got. Minutes. Another little jet, it actually looks identical to the one we just removed, just a slightly different head. So I don't want to make a mistake and mix them up. So it's I'm going to put a little arrow here. The one with the long taper is on this side, and on this side we've got one that's about a 45-degree taper. That'll make it easy for us when we go to put them back in. I'm also going to keep them separate, so I'll put one on the right, the one with the spring on the left. Let's keep going, see what we've got in here. See if we can remove our float pin. Yep, sometimes they're really hard to grab a hold of, and we'll get some pointy nose pliers. I'll also get some wire cutters as well, because sometimes you just need something that you can grab and get a good purchase on, just to get the pin out far enough, like I have now, that I can now remove it with pointy nose pliers. Okay, there's nothing in our floats. Just going to remove this pin all the way if I can. You've got to be really careful because these posts are sometimes quite brittle. If you pull too hard, you'll damage. So inside now, oh, we've just got another spring come out. So that is going to be off one of the first jets I took out that didn't come out with a spring. So we've got quite a lot of debris and dirt in here, so we can just start to remove it. Get in there. That looks pretty clear. We're just going to take out our main jet. Looks to me like it's an 8mm, and I did have an 8mm here a moment ago. So this one, the main jet itself is 6mm. We'll just crack that, and I'm going to go over the top and we'll remove the whole thing. By separating them now, it makes it easy. There are sizes on there, but I can't really make them out with a magnifying glass. Looks like 65 and something. Okay, there's a little clip holding our needle valve in. Just going to carefully remove that by hand. We'll pull our needle out. It's a metal needle. Yep, there's a significant groove around there. Just going to see if we can get a better look at that. Wait for the camera to focus up. Hopefully you can see there's quite a big indentation on that. If we use that again, we may get some float leakage. Let's have a look here. What have we got? Probably a 10mm. Again, that's not even, I should have done it with my fingers, it's not even finger tight. A lot of gunk in there. Doesn't look like it's been cleaned out. Just using my torch, it's really hard to see, but I think there may be a washer down the bottom of one of those holes. Let's have a look at everything else. From what I can see, everything else looks okay. We've got some varnish on the gasket surface. The gasket is that bad, and that's why it was weeping. Yep, we'll just have a poke around inside and see if there is a little washer in the jet area. Really hard to see in there, just the wrong lighting, but I can't see anything that's going to fall out, but what we'll do is we'll pull up the parts manual and just have a look in there to see what they say. Okay, we're just having a look now in the parts manual, and it's not showing any washers on the end of this. So number 5, which is the one closest to the engine side, is the throttle valve stop. So you wind that in and it lifts the slide up or down to adjust the idle speed. And number 7 is identified as the pilot air adjusting screw, and that's why that one was a full turn out. I don't know what the default is. Normally they're usually about 1.5. But everything's looking very dry in here. There's a few bits that are crusty and cakey. I'm going to pull them apart, give them a blowout with some compressed air, and then I'm going to throw them into our ultrasonic cleaner, and that'll give us a better view of what we've got and what we need to do. But as you can see, some of this is pretty crusty. I might have to take to that with a little wire brush first of all to remove all this debris that I can just wipe off with my fingers. I've just used a little wire brush on the end of the drill, and you can just see how much dirt has just come out of there before it goes into the ultrasonic cleaner. Okay, into the ultrasonic cleaner, we're just going to pour some hot water just as it came out of the tap, and some dishwashing liquid. All of the jets I'm going to put in this little cage so we don't lose them, just like that. They can go in, carburetor can go in, float bowl. Going to put the rest of the screws and springs and the pin, and we'll start that and just let it go. Let's go for 5 minutes. You can see there a little bit of venting out of one of those floats. That means that float definitely has a hole in it. So we're going to have to go in and solder that up. So I'm just going to remove it from the water now so it doesn't get full of water. I'll use a marker pen and just mark where the leak is, and we'll come back to the float later. Okay, let's see what comes out of here. Well, that's looking very nice and clean. It's cleaned up all around the gasket seal. All the body's cleaned out. I'm going to blow that out with compressed air and we'll get it to dry. Yep. The carburetor bowl is spotless as well. Got our little bag of goodies here. Get our washer. Everything's looking really clean. So I'm just going to put them down. It's not like the carburetor was really dirty to start with on this bike, but yeah, it just does such a good job of cleaning everything. So we'll have a bit of a fish around in the bottom here. Should have a spring that I dropped. Sorry, a jet I dropped. And the 4 carburetor bolts. So 1, 2, 3. I'll find its washer. You can tell I'm not a dishwasher. I can barely keep my hands in that. It's that hot. I'm missing a washer somewhere. Oh, there it is. And there's the other jet with the spring that I dropped. You just see how clean it makes everything. So I'm pretty sure that's it. Just going to have a look in the bottom to make sure there's nothing left. Oh, there's our float bowl pin. Now, rather than tip everything out, I always drain it into a bucket and then empty the bucket. That way it gives me a second and third chance to find things that have either made their way into the drain or I've forgotten to pull out. Okay, it's been a little bit hard for me to identify and pinpoint exactly where this leak is, but I know the region. So I've just given the floats a bit of a clean up with some wire brush, and we're now going to solder it. I did put a little bit of a torch flame onto one of the ones I did previously, and it completely undid the solder for the whole float. When I say previously, I mean a couple of years ago when I was playing with another bike. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to use my soldering iron, which I use for electronics. So they say not to do this, but I'm just going to put a little bit of flux on my finger, rub it backwards and forwards so it sort of melts a little bit. I'm going to smear it on the area where I want my solder to go. This flux is apparently safe to eat, neutral pH, so I wouldn't have the problems I have with some of the more industrial fluxes. I'm just going to apply a bit of heat to the area. We'll get it nice and warm without desoldering the cup. Must be so thin, this brass, because the transfer of heat is almost instant. So I'm just going to paint my way through. Okay, we're ready to reassemble everything now. I'm still really worried about this really strong lip I've got around here, but I'm going to put it back in, give it a try, and we'll see. So we can start with the reassembly. I'll put back in the needle seat, and from memory that was a 10mm. Going to go to our sides now, and we'll put back in our 2 jets. So because I did the little diagram before, I know that the one with a 45-degree almost point on it is the what I call the front hole. So that's the throttle stop. So we can put that in. It was wound in all the way back a quarter of a turn roughly. But we reset that as we get the bike running. So it's in all the way. I'm going to go back a turn. We'll just check again. This one's got the sort of small taper. This is our pilot air mixture. And we'll screw that in till it seats. So that's seating there now. It was 1 turn, so I'm just going to screw it out 1 turn, so that's half. That's 1, and I'm just going to have a look in the manual. Somewhere here I've got the operator's manual. When I say operators, I mean owner's manual. The owner's manuals in the old days have a lot more information in them than they do today, because they expected people would do nearly all their maintenance themselves, whereas nowadays nothing like that happens. Okay, so it says here to turn it in all the way until it seats and then turn back 1.5 turns. In the case of the K11 model, it's 1.25 turns. So we have a K10, so we're going to go another half turn. That's an ideal starting point for us. That should look after most of what we're doing. We can keep going. So this jet we've cleaned out and everything's nice with it. Just screw it in till it seats and then just nip it up just ever so slightly. You don't need to over tighten any of these jets, because they are only brass and you'll end up stripping them out. So if I can find our spanner, so the bottom one is 8mm and then the top one from memory was 6mm. So that's back in. Our needle needs to go in. So needle goes in, and then we put this little retaining clip. Oh. We need to get that lined up with a groove. That's got it. That just holds the needle in to stop it moving too far. Our floats, we've repaired our floats, so I've taken a lot of material off our solder. So let's line them up. I'm going to go the other way, there's less marks on the pin. No, it's still a bit tight. Let's try it from the other side. Just a few little barbs on the end there, so I'm going to put just the tiniest amount of oil on it. Oil's just coming out now. 1 drop, 2 drops, that'll help it go through much easier. We'll align our floats up. anything you do with the floats, and the float pin in particular, be very, very careful around it, because these posts break off a lot of times. So that's the simplicity of this carburetor, so little to do. I recently did a carburetor on a Suzuki DRZ 400E, I think it is, and it was a nightmare. It really was. Now this gasket is so far past its use by date. It's so brittle, but I have no choice but to reuse it, unfortunately. So what I'm going to do is to put some grease on the gasket surfaces and hopefully get a slightly better seal until a new one can be ordered. Now, I still haven't worked out where all of this stuff comes from, but I'm sure by the time I need to get a few more parts, I'll have that worked out. We're just applying the very lightest amount of grease. This grease applicator here, it's actually really good. It's from the bicycle industry, because we need to get into a lot of tight places, and it's a fantastic way of applying grease without making a mess everywhere. I'm just going to come now back in with a small disposable paintbrush. Just going to grease up the bristles a little bit. I'm just going to use that to go around here and just spread the grease out, make sure I've got a nice even amount of grease. And normally with a good seal, you wouldn't need to do this, you just put it back together. Okay, I'm going to position our seal. You can see how bad it is. I'm not sure this is going to work, but we'll give it a go. So I'm going to grease up the float bowl here. So we align this. A lot of people ask, what stops this pin from falling out when you're riding? Well, the answer is all float bowls have two little ledges in there. So when you join these parts together, it stops the pin from moving sideways. I really don't have much hope for this gasket because it is just so far gone, but we'll just try it. We'll sit it on. We'll get our screws fitted. This could be one of the reasons why the float bowl was not connected to the carburetor so well. Just going to lift these up very gently. Okay, I can see a lot of the gasket squeezed out the side here, so I'm not really confident that we're not going to have a lot of fuel leaking, but I'll get one on order and we'll try it out and see what happens. But for now, I'm pretty happy with that. We've now got a clean carburetor. Okay, we're going to get this carburetor back in. I just want to take a good look at our choke. That looks pretty clean. I don't see any issues with that, so I'm just going to temporarily mount it in there, and that'll hold our carburetor. Okay, that's interesting. It's not screwing in. Okay, so somebody has over-tightened this, and nearly all of the threads are damaged. I can see there's good thread at the bottom, but not at the top. So this is going to be a bit of a problem, but let's just see what we can do. Let me pull out. I have an idea. Let's just see if we can do this. Yep, so I've got that off. So I can see threads. I can see threads right at the bottom of the carburetor here, but I just can't get down far enough. So I'm going to drop this in the lathe and just skim off probably 2 millimeters, and that'll allow the choke to sit a little bit further in the hole, and hopefully it'll be able to seat properly. Okay, I'm back again. Let's have a look what happened. I've taken a couple of millimeters off. Oh, that's going to work. Can feel it in the threads. Perfect. So I managed to save that, albeit not the really nice way to do it, but we've saved it. So let's just get our cable back on. One of these jobs where you need 10 fingers. Hang on, I've got 10 fingers. Sorry, 3 hands. Okay, that's back on. Bit of a struggle, but we've got there in the end. Okay, 9 mil. We're going to tighten up this carburetor. We want to make sure that it's sitting level. And that's really quite important, because if it's not, you can have like the incorrect fuel on one side versus the other. Okay, that's done up fairly firm. We're going to put our slide back in. I'll just check which way the post goes. I'm going to go around and very carefully fit that choke now. We've machined it down a little bit. Getting quite a good bite there by the look of it. Just get that thread started. Okay, I'm happy with that. We'll move on now and have a look at this spark plug. Looks like an old champion. It's fairly tight. Let's see what's going on. Hopefully we don't have any damage. Pull that spark plug out and you can see it's been running rich. It's quite a strange looking spark plug. It's a Champion. Keep losing our focus, I'm sorry. It's a Champion F11Y. Now spark plug which is standard in this is a B7S. Is a standard spark plug, but I'm just going to give this a little bit of a clean and we'll check for spark. Okay, I've just given this a bit of a clean up on the wire wheel. We'll put it back into here and we're going to check for spark. I also had to change the plug gap. It was quite a lot. It was out by quite a way. Now I don't know if this is going to work without ignition, obviously. So we've got to work out the ignition switch is the next thing. And then I need to also work if it's got a requirement to have a battery to get spark. Okay, I've just taken off the ignition switch so I can have a look at the back side of it. And as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wires in total. I've got no idea what they're doing, how they work, so I'm going to have to dive into a wiring diagram. Just been having a close look at some of this wiring, and I'm going to need to go over everything and replace it because there's things like this that are in there just open to the elements. No idea why. The fuse I've had a look at, it's covered in rust, so yeah, probably not going to work. All the ends are corroded, so I'm just going to take a break. We'll go through here, do a quick clean up, see what's going on, and then we'll move on. Okay, I've been off camera now for a little while and I went out to the internet and found some easy to read colour wiring diagrams, both for the same bike but they're different. So I managed to work out what's going on. The original fuse was useless, so I got rid of that and I've just put in an automotive style blade fuse, 15 amps. So I put that into the system. I've temporarily got a battery sitting up here and connected what I think needs to be connected, and I've just turned over the Kickstarter and I notice now I've got a good spark. So I'm just going to kick the bike over. You'll see it's producing good spark. If I disconnect the battery line, so I've just disconnected the negative, you'll see that it still has spark. So that answers the question that you don't need to have a battery connected for the bike to go. So I'm just going to disconnect a few other wires here. So I've disconnected our battery and I'm going to feed that through to the other side to be connected. I'm just going to put the lid on our automotive fuse. This cluster here has obviously got to be in some sort of plastic shroud. There's nothing there that's working at the moment, so I'm going to tape that up. If I can cut that off. So I'm just going to remove that plastic. I'm just going to tape that up because that's actually live in the back with all these other wires, and not very healthy. We'll come back and look at those again shortly. We'll get it all tidied up once we get everything running. So I've got the rectifier here. That's going to have a terrible job earthing out inside the back there, so I'm going to wrap that in plastic for now. Yeah, I'm not really sure why all of this stuff is just floating around loose, but we can just put it out of the road for now. It's pretty good. So that's all tidied up just to be safe for now. There seems to be a number of wires that are not used. We've got a blinker relay which I've tested and it is working, but we won't be using it for now. That's our battery wire. Just going to poke that out there. And we'll put everything inside temporarily. And I'll go back around to the other side. Now I know we've got spark, and just tidy up the ignition switch, which I've had to jump. Okay, because we've got no key, I went to pull the ignition switch apart to just get it out, and of course springs and ball bearings flew out in all directions. So I'm now just left with the ignition plate here, and I've just used test leads to jumper what I showed you previously, and that basically is what they call the daytime running conditions. So it'll run without the headlights being on. We need to adjust it to run for night time. If we want that to work as well, we have to just change the jumper settings. So for now, we're going to plug in our positive lead, our negative lead. So even though we don't need electrics to run this, we will. I'm going to put the spark plug back in, and then we'll do a check for oil. Don't want to overdo our spark plug. So we've got an oil check here. Okay, as only some smart motorcycle engineer would think about, the oil filler is actually the same size as the spark plug. Oh, that was pretty loose too. So we can remove the oil filler. It's got a little fibre washer underneath it. Not sure it's the right size, a bit of movement, but we'll see how we go. I can see one of the gears in there. We have a bit more compression now. I've got the spark plug back in. I'm just going to have a quick dip and we'll check for oil. Well, we do have oil on the bottom. Brand new oil by the look of it, never been run. So for this startup, I won't change the oil. I'll leave it as it is because it looks brand new, and I'm assuming the last person to play with this bike did fill it up to the right setting. If the oil looked a bit murky, then I certainly wouldn't run that risk. So now we've pretty much got everything. We've checked our oil, we've done a carburetor service, the throttle is working, the choke is working, our spark plug is back on. The next step is to add some fuel, and we'll try and start the bike. The book tells me that the oil mixture ratio is 20:1, so that is 20 parts of fuel to 1 part of oil. But that's with oil from the 1960s, and today's oil is much more modern, better, easier to use. So I'm going to normally run, say, 20:1 mixture, but for this testing I'm going to just mix up half a litre of fuel with the appropriate amount of oil to give me a mixture of around 30:1. So I'm halfway between old oils and modern oils. The reason I'm not using the fuel tank is because it's got some rust in there, and we'll need a session with evaporust So for now, I'm just using our fuel supply, which is nice and convenient and easy to use. Okay, we need to make sure that this is really thoroughly mixed. So we'll just get the lid back on this. This is a brand new one. My last one got trodden on and cracked. So I'm just going to let a bit of air into here. The reason is because I put oil in first, it may have gone down the tube. So I'm just going to go back through the line, blow it through. That'll let any of the oil come out, and I'll continue with the mixing. That's about right. I'll pass that through and we'll go on the other side and connect up the fuel hose. Can actually do it from this side. So I've got it connected. I'm going to turn the fuel on, and then we've got our moment of truth. As the carburetor fills, will fuel come out of the fuel bowl? At the moment I'm looking and everything looks to be okay and dry. So I'm going to drop down our stand now, and then we'll attempt to start the bike for the first time in, I don't know how long, but I'm guessing probably 15 to 20 years. And that little bit of movement, dropping the bike off the stand there, has caused the fuel to overflow, and it's coming out quite quickly, as expected, around that carburetor base. So I'm just going to turn that fuel off for now, and we'll work on a new plan. You can see the reflection here, just how much fuel is coming out. You can see it oozing out around there, so our little trick of putting some grease on there to try and seal it has not worked at all. So I'm going to go for plan B. We're going to take the carburetor off and have a look at what we can do to make it work. One little design problem I saw was that if the carburetor leaks, it pools in the crankcase here, but right over the other side is a hole, and the fuel escapes through there and drips underneath the bike, so that's quite good. On my case, I'm on the centre stand, which makes it harder, but if it was on the side stand, the fuel would completely drain away. Well, I've spent about an hour down at the shops and bought some gasket material. I've made myself a replacement gasket, which I'm not going to show you too close because it is terrible, but it should work. So I'm just going to pop these screws back in. We'll have a better turn this time around. Connect up some fuel. So we've got our fuel back on. You just turn that fuel on and give it a second to percolate through the system. I'll just give our carburetor giving it a few little taps. It's had a good tap and so far nothing's leaking, so we may be okay. We'll just go and lower the bike down and we'll try again. We've got it down on the ground and we'll go for take two. We'll try and start it again, see what happens. So I'm going to put our choke on full. It's only small capacity, so we don't really need a big push of anything. It's got really good compression. It nearly went on the first go. take the choke off. Okay, we'll adjust that idle a little bit. It's obviously a bit low. I think there's still a few fuel gremlins in there, getting some air out of the system. Okay, I've wound that in and then out quarter of a turn, which is where it was originally, even though it seemed a bit wrong. Good news, there's no fuel leaking yet. Sounds a bit funny because it's got no air cleaner on there. I can see here they've welded the kickstart on, and it's causing some stiffness in the side. I'd say they've burned out that seal. But okay, we'll try a bit of choke again. I think it's getting a bit too much fuel, we'll see. Well, to me, that's sounding really good for now. We'll just check that spark plug. We've got no fuel leaks. We'll need to work out what we're going to do with the air cleaner, or lack thereof, and we'll move forward from here. But overall today, I'm very happy. We've got this bike semi-resurrected. It's running, it's idling. Great news. We could be in for being able to ride it tomorrow. So I've just pulled out this spark plug, and you can see there it's a little bit wet, but might be getting just a little bit too much fuel, I think. But for now, this is going to do us. I'm going to start putting it back together, checking the tyres, the brakes, see what else we've got to fix up. We've got to work out that air cleaner for it. I've got a couple of ideas because I don't have the original, unfortunately, but I've got a couple of ideas where we may be able to adapt something. So, going to leave it there for today. We'll catch up with everyone tomorrow. Good morning and welcome back to another day. I've been thinking about things overnight and the carburetor is still leaking. I had a good look online and it's definitely the needle and seat. So I tried to find a source for new needle and seat, but unfortunately I can't. I spent a good 2 hours looking and can't find anything out there. But I did come across a website that mentioned resurfacing the needle. So I've got nothing to lose. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and resurface the needle to stop it leaking. I also managed to find a place in the UK that was selling the proper fuel bowl gaskets. So I've ordered in 4 of them, one for this bike and some others for the rest of the bikes we're restoring. And yeah, as soon as they come in, we'll definitely replace it. But for now, I'm going to get on and try and resurface the needle. Now, I must say I'm getting really nervous about taking this carburetor in and out repeatedly especially with this choke fitting that we've had to do some work to. So I'm going to try and do everything now, keeping the choke and slide already attached. Okay, I've decided it's going to be a bit hard to do it while keeping it on the bike, so I'm going to run the risk of disconnecting it one more time, and I'll try and do a few further testing on the workshop bench. That way we don't need to fit the choke for the testing until we get this all sorted out. Try and drain out any fuel that's left. Seems to be quite a lot. Okay, we're just going to remove the float bowl again. Those bolts were not very tight, so I'd say that gasket that we made yesterday has taken up. You can actually see an indent from the seal around the gasket, so it's sort of kind of working but not really. Okay, we're going to push out the pin. Our floater's not leaking, so that's really good news. Push this over, get a bit more room. Got to take off this little circlip which holds the needle valve in place. And of course they always eject off and disappear into the netherland, but fortunately I've got it. Now, let me see if we can get a focus on this and see the lip. There's definitely a big indentation all around that needle seat, and I can actually feel it with my finger. So what I'm going to try and do is work out a way to resurface the taper just by skimming the smallest amount off the needle. Let's see what we can do. Okay, on this sequence, somebody forgot to turn the microphone on, so I'm overdubbing. Basically, I had to find a way to hold the needle in place on the lathe. I couldn't find any suitable stock, but then I got the idea of getting a brass T-fitting, lopping off one of the ends, machining it down so it could be held in the lathe, machining the inside out so the seat would sit in there, the needle would sit in there, and then using an oil stone, just try and grind ever so slightly that lip out. So I'll put a little bit of oil onto the oil stone, start the lathe and give it a go. Let's put it back together and just see what happens. So I'm just going to go onto the fuel intake. I'm just using a little syringe here. I'm going to put some air into it. Does sound like it's pretty close. It's holding a vacuum now in the closed position. So I'm just going to go and check what the float height should be, and we can check the float height and see if there's any changes that need to be made there. And I'm also, rather than just look on the internet for carburetors parts for this particular model of bike. I know this is a Makuni because it's got it written on the side here. It's got a model number, VM17-18. So what I'm going to do is duck away, have a look on the internet and see if I can find anything on the internet where I can get a new needle and seat specific to this carburetor, and we'll remove the bike from our searching. Hello again. Well, I waited a couple of days for my parts to arrive for the carburetor rebuild, which was the new needle and seat and float bowl gasket. Unfortunately, what arrived doesn't match what I thought I ordered. I went back through it and I made a mistake on the side here. It's got VM-7. I'll start again. On the side it has VM17-18. So when I was looking at carburetors, I thought, well, VM18 is going to be the same. It's obviously the same for 17 and 18. So I ordered it, doesn't fit. So what I'm going to try and do is use the needle and seat that I modified. Remember, I used the lathe and oil stone, and I went and repointed the needle itself. Well, I think that's going to work because I've blown through here with the float valve open and closed, and I've done a vacuum with the syringe, and it's holding it. So I'm going to refit the carburetor and plug everything in and try again. What you need is on the carburetor, again making sure it's nice and level. We'll tighten it up firmly. I'll go and refit the float and the choke. I'm going to turn our choke on to compress the cable, and we'll get it in and start it again. Okay, spark plug on. I'm going to reconnect the fuel. Let's see what happens this time. Okay, the fuel is on. We'll give it a few minutes to go through the system. Give it a few taps and see if it's going to start leaking again. Not yet, so I'm going to drop the table and we'll give it a go at starting. Okay, we're back on the ground. Choke is on. Better make sure I'm doing that the right way. Start is that way, which is right. Our fuel is on. Our throttle is working. Let's give this a few kicks and we'll see what happens. Just turn the choke off. Our idle is way too high. The bike is still cold though, so you feel it getting higher again. Let's check the bike running through the gears. to drop that idle a bit more. Actually sounds really nice. Okay, choke in, first gear. Second, third, fourth. Third, second, first, neutral. Noisy, but I'd say we've got a runner. We can put everything back together after cleaning out the fuel tank and go for a bit of a test ride. I'm really happy. Okay, it's time to go through and treat this fuel tank. Just working out what I'm going to do to stop it from leaking, because this cock is not working that well. So I might take it off and try and plug the top here. Might be the best way to do it. I was thinking I could crimp a hose, but I've got leaks here. There's something wrong internally, because I can actually pull out the little fitting here, which is not great. So it's obviously going to leak fairly well. So let's take it off and we'll have a look. And then I've got a new bottle of Evaporust. I'm getting a bit low on my old bottle, so I've decided to go and get a new bottle. The good thing with Evaporust is you can use it again and again. Okay, we've got to find something to plug this hole. So I've tried about 10 different ways to plug this hole and can't find anything that's going to plug it, so I've just grabbed an 8mm bolt and to thicken it up a bit, I'm putting a taper on it. I'm winding some thread tape from plumbing around it, and we'll see how that works. No, I need some more by the look of it. Just build this up. We're just going to push it into the outlet hole and try and seal it. That should be enough, hopefully. Yep, that'll work. I'll just give that a little tap in. That, my friends, should provide a good enough seal, I hope. Okay, we can just put some of this Evaporust in. Litres in there. Just going to lower the front a little bit. Okay, we're going to let it sit there and do its magic. here we are. I've got it back together, and the tank has been cleaned out. I don't want to put new fuel in it because this may not get started for a long time, so I'm just running off the little fuel canister on the side. I think we're pretty much right to go. I say again, this is the most uncomfortable seat I've ever sat on in my life, but that's the way they were back in 1965. Let's get it started, and we'll go for a ride in the car park. That was pretty easy. I just used the choke for 2 kicks. Sounded a bit rich, so took the choke off and it's just started. It's coming down to an idle. Hopefully that idle will settle down in a minute. Seems to be just still a little bit high. Maybe racing a little bit. We'll see what happens as it settles down. Let's see if it goes into gear first. Clutch in. Well, as I expected. When a bike sits for so long, the clutch plates can sort of bind up together and they don't rotate. So let's just start it up and we'll let it run and get some heat into the engine to start with. So I'm just going to let this warm up, get some heat into the engine, and then we'll start again, see if we can break those clutch plates free. I'm excited. So what we'll do, just to get it going first, is we'll just push it along and get it rolling, and then we'll drop it into gear. It won't be such a strain on the gearbox. Okay, front brake works. Let's try the back brake. Yep. First gear's got a huge range. Let's just go into second. That's into second gear. Oh, this has got a lot of pickup. It's pretty responsive. I've got to get used to this gear. It's so unusual to me to go down and up. Completely different to a normal bike. Let's just put it into first and we'll see. See, now it went into first and there was no jumping forward of the bike. That's because those clutch plates have now released. So I'm letting it go at a very low idle. We'll give it about 3/4 throttle. So it's got pretty good pickup for something that's so small. So we're in first again. First, second. We'll go back to first. This is great. Everything's working as it should. Back into neutral. Let's just turn this off for a second. Well, I hope you've enjoyed me during the process of getting this old bike running again. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot. I still have another 3 to do. The fourth one is really just a rolling basket case, so nothing may happen with that. But for now, I'm going to consider this one done. There's still a few things we need to look at, a few things we need to tidy up, but we won't do that on camera. We'll do that off camera as time allows. But for now, I'm really happy with this. Thank you for watching.